I took a mental health break last week. I was a little burnt out, so I didn't get to cover the raging wildfires going on in California right now. Unfortunately, the wildfires in California are not super new, but they are accelerating. They are getting worse. The images out of California, it's also spread into Oregon, are horrifying. I think 23 people have died in the last 2 weeks from the wildfires in California. People losing their homes. Just imagine the terror of being engulfed in your town or your home in fire. President Trump is basically providing no leadership. This is not just a short-term thing, this is a long-term thing, because the president of the United Corporations of America doesn't believe in climate change, or he's either being willfully ignorant or he's just a moron. I think it's a mix of both. Clearly, wildfires happen in many places in the world, from California to Australia. In some cases, it's good. In some cases, wildfires help clear out dead, trees and brush and that kind of stuff from forests. But it's not so good if it's not happening in seasons anymore, but year-round. And it's also not good if, because of the climate change, accelerated winds and wet season coming later is causing them to be intensified. So that's what's going on in California. You've had years of drought in the mid-2010s, and you also have, unquestionable higher temperatures, and those higher temperatures are leading. The higher temperatures are the spark. Those are the spark for the fuel, and the fuel is the trees, is the brush, is the grass, is basically anything that's flammable. So basically, Trump's response to this has been, unsurprisingly, ridiculous. Trump interrupted a Western campaign today to go to California to review the wildfire damage and renew his argument with state and local officials about what he says is the main cause of the fires that have claimed the lives of at least 35 people this month. While government officials and scientists identified climate change as the primary culprit behind the intense wildfires, Trump insisted during a briefing in Northern California that, quote, forest management is more to blame. When trees fall down after a short period of time, they become very dry, really like a matchstick, and they could explode, Trump said as he and others breathed in the smoky, hazy air near Sacramento. Of course, again, you don't know if he's being willfully ignorant or he's just a moron. When he says during dry conditions, why are the dry conditions lasting so much longer? Why is California's wet season coming basically a month later? Because summer is supposed to be dry, but California was having drought basically in every season for many years during the 2010s. This is because of climate change. So again, either a moron, willfully ignorant, whatever, he's dangerous. And Donald Trump is really the match. And the Republican Party, I should say, is really the match for disastrous climate change and the disastrous climate crisis, which should be treated the same exact way as the coronavirus pandemic, because long term, it's going to kill more people than the coronavirus will kill. Not that the coronavirus deaths are insignificant. And to be clear, this is not whataboutism. Donald Trump, I'm not a fan of Joe Biden, but reality is reality. Donald Trump is much, much worse than Joe Biden on the environment. With that said, I think we're fooling ourselves. And frankly, if you're buying the bullshit Joe Biden is selling, really what you're talking about is the difference between more immediate planetary destruction and immediate death and destruction versus a slower burn of planetary destruction and death and destruction. Biden today in Delaware in front of brush, which was, I guess, symbolic, talked about, like many other things, tossing out, and I'm sorry to say, I don't think Biden is writing most of these speeches. I don't even think his policy is necessarily coming from him. I think he's got people around him telling him and putting in certain things in these policies. However, Biden is promising a lot of things, you know, or aggressive shift to electric cars. We're going to give rebates for you to buy electric cars. We're going to really double down on wind, renewables, solar. That's great. All those things I agree with. However, he's talking about Donald Trump being a climate arsonist, which is true. But what the media is not reporting is, regardless of what Donald Trump, regardless of what Joe Biden says he's going to do in the positive, none of those things will make the difference that's needed to be made if he does not ban fracking. And when I hear him, and I watched his whole speech today, when I hear him say these things, it's almost like, you know, if you're in a relationship where you got a really convincing sleazebag of a boyfriend or girlfriend. You know, they verbally abuse you. They take you for granted. They flirt with other women or men. But for that 10% of the time, they know how to sweet talk you. That 10% of the time, they're really, really good at romancing you and being attentive and affectionate. So that kind of keeps you going when the 90% of the time, they're unreliable and not doing the right thing. This is really what you're getting from Joe Biden on climate change. I mean, here's one example. This is him during his speech.
By increasing energy efficiency and by reducing the racial wealth gap linked to home ownership. There are thousands of oil and natural gas wells that oil companies and gas companies have abandoned, many of which are leaking toxins. We can create 250,000 jobs now by just plugging those wells right away. Good union jobs for energy workers. This will help sustain communities and protect them from the environmental damage as well. We'll also create new markets for our family farmers and ranchers. We'll launch a new modern civilian climate corps.
So, does anybody here, if you know what you're talking about in terms of the climate crisis, global warming, all that stuff? Joe Biden, in one breath, and he's saying a lot of good things, I'll give him credit. He's saying a lot of good things about electric, giving rebates and tax credits if you buy electric, which China's been doing for years. Talking, you know, up wind, renewable, yada yada, you know, electric transit. A lot of what he's saying is positive. However, in one breath, he's talking about creating 250,000 jobs by finding all the abandoned wells around the country that are most of them fracked gas wells, by the way, and plugging the leaks, because most of them are leaking toxins into the air. So right there, he's acknowledging that leaking gas or leaking oil or leaking waste products from the fracking process, dirty water, because you need a lot of water with fracking. Fracking's waste products are toxins. He just said it. So how in one breath can you be talking about we could create millions of jobs by doing the necessary thing, plugging leaks at wells all around the country, which I agree with doing, but on the other end, not being against banning fracking? And by the way, for those in the back who claim, because I've seen this argument on the interweb, Jordan, the president doesn't have the power to ban fracking on private land. They could only do it on public land. You know, when the president of the United States takes an interest or has the will, yeah, you wait how fast fracking can be banned on private lands. Or if legally a president can ban fracking on private lands, a president certainly could add so much regulation to the point it's economically impossible to frack on private lands and make a profit. So you could either, if you can't ban it, you could certainly make it that fracking is just not economically possible for those mother frackers. Excuse my French. I've covered a lot of pipelines. Any fracked gas pipeline and crude oil pipelines, every one of them has leaks. Some are massive leaks that you actually see in the news, even though the oil companies lie about how many gallons leaked. And then there's just the everyday micro leaks that happen by sheer fact of these are high pressured natural gas pipelines. They don't always get the pressuring right, which happens through compressor stations. Just by the act of fracking and fracking to get the oil and gas, the earth actually moves. I learned this a couple years ago when I was reporting in Virginia on the Mountain Valley Pipeline with Jen. And through the earth moving, you have more and more leaks. It's not only that they're leaking into the air, which is the methane release. Methane, you have different estimates, but methane is estimated to be 30 to 60 times more hazardous and potent than carbon dioxide, which for a long time was considered the worst of the worst in terms of greenhouse gases. Methane, which is emitted through natural gas, is worse. So you tell me, in one breath, Joe Biden is talking about we got to hire people to plug the holes, plug the leaks in wells, which is good. That's wonderful. But where do we have more leaks coming from? The wells or the frack gas pipelines that you're not doing anything about because you and the idiots around you think, well, we can't lose those blue collar people in Pennsylvania or Michigan, or Ohio or Wisconsin. Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.